The National Health Service has raised an alarm, saying a rising number of people will fall sick and the public's health overall will worsen if the government doesn't limit planned energy price rises. The NHS Confederation says the country is facing a humanitarian crisis, warning that in the coming months people will have to make a choice between skipping meals in order to afford to heat their homes, or they'll have to live in cold, damp conditions. Government officials say they are already taking action, something the NHS also supported, including offering each household a £400 discount on their energy bills. Meanwhile, the opposition Labour Party has called on the government to recall MPs to Parliament. The shadow leader of the House of Commons, Thangam Debonair, wrote a letter to caretaker Prime Minister Boris Johnson, urging him to call MPs back from their summer break 2 weeks early in order to deal with the crisis, with Labour stressing the need for new policies to be put in place before an energy price increase in October is of paramount importance. Well, for more on this story, we're now being joined by Greg Swenson from London, founding partner at Brigg Macadam Limited, and he's an economic commentator. Mr. Swenson, we've spoken a lot about the energy price cap increase that's planned for October. Can you just talk us through what that will mean for the average household? What's the predictions?
Yes, Laura, there's going to be some pain and suffering for consumers here in the United Kingdom. The current rate on average is just below £2,000, £1,971. That was a 54% increase that went into effect in April of this year. But the estimate for early in 2023, it will go up considerably, up to £4,266. So it's essentially doubling every year. And it's important to remind the viewers that this crisis didn't start on February 24th with the invasion of Ukraine. This started long before that, in early 2021, when we started seeing the early stages of an inflation spiral, basically a wage price spiral. So yes, the near term doesn't look very good for consumers here in Great Britain.
There's been a lot of criticism about this decision to hike this cap, and even one of the board members from the UK's energy watchdog, Ofgem, has resigned, saying that she was concerned about the balance between consumers and also suppliers, basically saying that that balance wasn't being met. So do energy companies have to charge this much, or is it about profits?
Well, no, they really do. I mean, the costs have gone up considerably. I mean, the price of natural gas was up fivefold before the war, and it's continued to go up. So, the price cap is an economic loser. It's also a political loser, because you're basically putting gas providers out of business. There were a considerable number of bankruptcies last year when the natural gas prices accelerated, or the hikes accelerated. And the caps, limited the price that the companies can charge. So they're only trying to cover their costs. It is painful, but this is the failure of price caps in general. And that was, surprising that a conservative government would embrace that like they did in 2019. But this all started with Labour and Ed Miliband back in 2015. It shows the danger of conservative governments, trying to play socialism light. And it doesn't work in the long term. And now we have a near-term challenge for this government, because they're going to have to subsidize, and they've already announced a £400 subsidy, but that's not even going to cover it. So there is going to be some near-term pain, but I think what's important is to figure out the solution for the long term, and that is to not have price caps and increase the supply. And I think most politicians are ignoring the supply side of the economy. Obviously there were mistakes made on the demand side with, money printing and zero rates and quantitative easing from the Bank of England and other central banks. But they're ignoring the supply side. The ban on fracking in 2019, this sort of obsession with net zero. It's not a political winner, and it's surely not an economic winner.
So we've got the energy price increase, we've got the cost of living overall, food, people finding that their weekly shops are now way more expensive than they've seen them in the last few years. How bleak is the outlook for the UK? Are we heading towards a recession ultimately?
Yes, I mean, we're probably in a recession already. The inflation numbers for July were 10.1%, whereas the consensus expectation was 9.8. So once again, the actual numbers came out higher than the expected numbers. And also real wages, wages adjusted for inflation are down 3% year over year. So, the people in the United Kingdom just can't afford to pay for for energy and food. Grocery prices were up 11 or 12% year over year. So it's not just energy, it's food. And ultimately, natural gas prices, because of the inputs into the fertilizer sector, that ends up being reflected in higher food prices. So yeah, the inflation is here to stay. It's not transitory, as the Bank of England tried to say last year. And it's, we're in the midst of a wage price spiral. As earlier when Alex was talking about, these the strikes that are occurring in London right now, of course, workers want higher wages. Even a 5% increase is going to be negative in terms of real wages. So yeah, we're in a bit of a pinch here in the United Kingdom.
Greg Swenson in London, thank you for your time there.
Thanks, Laura.